Welcome to Cross Culture, real life, real talk, real wisdom. At Cross Culture, we believe that if we can change the way that we think, we can allow ourselves to align with God's purpose for our life and then impact the culture around us. This is Cross Culture. So welcome to Cross Culture. I have the privilege of having my brother in the Lord here with me, Joseph Mendoza. Welcome to the Cross Culture podcast.
And brother, what a blessing to be here with you.
Absolutely. So, here at Cross Culture, we're all about allowing God's power to really transform people's lives.
Right.
And when I first met you a few years back, I met the Joseph that's fully saved, redeemed,
Right.
put together. And I had no idea the testimony, tremendous testimony that you had and how God really had an impact on your life. So I wanted to bring you in studio today because I feel that message, that testimony can impact so many people's lives. And the things that you have gone through can save people from having to experience those same situations, or if they're in the same situation, can help to pull them out. So let's just kind of start from the beginning and share with us about this powerful testimony that you have.
Well, first of all, I think that's powerful because a lot of times in life, people just see a more polished version of an individual. And you and I know that generally behind that polished person, that there's a backstory, right?
Absolutely.
And everybody's backstory is different, right? Everybody's upbringing is different. And my backstory just happens to be a little unique. And obviously, I would not be here today and would not have met you. We would not have the brotherhood we do. We would not serve in ministry like we do. We would not do life like we do. Our families wouldn't be together like they are, if it wasn't for God's grace, if it wasn't for God's mercy. And, Kris, I was born in an alcoholic family. I was raised in an alcoholic home. And I know that there's so many people out there today in society, especially with COVID, that are struggling with addiction, whether it be alcoholism, drugs, depression, anxiety, food disorders. And that's the thing is people like to classify and categorize addiction. But I tell you this, alcohol addiction is the same as drug addiction, is the same as food addiction, porn addiction. Somebody is suffering from something. I thought that living in an alcoholic home was a normal way of life. I was born Catholic. I was raised Catholic. We went to Sunday Mass every Sunday. Little Joseph was an altar boy, so I knew all the altar boy movements. And, I was raised by a mom and a dad who were doing their best. My dad happened to be a functioning alcoholic. So for those of you who don't know, or maybe you don't know, what a functioning alcoholic is, a functioning alcoholic is somebody who can get up and manage and handle the day-to-day operations and duties as a husband, as a father, as an employee, as a person in society. And my dad happened to be a functioning alcoholic. Was there times that I saw him hammered, passed out? 100%. But for me, it was just a way of life.
Yeah.
My brother and I, we thought it was normal. Parents would have friends over. They'd be partying all night long. My dad retired 40 years, Arrowhead Water, as a heavy diesel mechanic. So his love language was drinking all night, in the garage, working on cars. Any mechanic's dream.
Yeah.
In the garage, with your friends, working on cars, drinking all night long. Was there some extracurricular drug activities going on? Absolutely, there was. But once again, Kris, we thought it was a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like we thought this is the way families operated.
It became your culture.
It was my culture. It was my culture. It was my upbringing. I was never ashamed of it. It never stopped me from bringing friends over. Our house was the house to be. I don't know if you ever had a friend growing up where it was like their house was the house to be.
Yeah.
Our house was the house to be for my brother's friends and my friends because our parents were partying nonstop. So there was never really any curfews. There was like, when the street lights come on, you got to be home. Sure, but once you get home, the lights can stay on all night. So our house, was the house to be. And you and I have an amazing mentor, an amazing friend who's named Tim Story. And Tim always talks about being birthed in pain.
Yeah.
And I honestly know what it's like, Kris, to be birthed in pain. When I look back, I was birthed in pain. I carried all those years with me. I heard this analogy one time by Joel Osteen. And Joel talks about you carry all that baggage, and before you know it, you're trying to go through a TSA check at the airport, and they don't let you through because you got so much junk in those suitcases and that luggage that you're just so bogged down, and you got things that shouldn't even be with you, and they're stopping you at TSA saying, you can't go through. That's literally how my life was. My life was so many suitcases of so much baggage that I had accumulated over the years, Kris, that I never knew the effect.
Yeah.
I never knew the toll. I never knew the places or spaces that it would take me in a negative way. So, sophomore year in high school, 4 grandparents, my mom's mom and dad, my dad's mom and dad. Both my dad's parents pass alcoholism.
Wow.
Grandma's an alcoholic. Dad's dad hit and killed, drunk driver.
My goodness.
Okay. Mom's side of the family. Grandfather passes, alcoholic. Grandma, who was my nana, the only grandparent I knew when I was born, only grandparent alive, 1978. You could do the math how old I am. Just celebrated a birthday in December. Only grandparent I knew. It's crazy because I look at my kids today and it's like they have both sets of grandparents.
Yeah.
I was raised by my grandma. Okay. And my grandma, who we called Nana, my brother and I, she was like our everything. She was the protector. She's who watched us, who cared for us, who provided for us because she knew what was going on in the household.
Right.
She knew the chaos. She knew the craziness. She knew my dad. She knew everything that was going on. So that was like our place of refuge. Like, let's go to Nana's. Let's go hang with Nana. Let's go stay with her for the week. Let's go stay with her for the weekend. So that was like our place of refuge, our place of retreat, our place of comfort. And, I'll never forget sophomore in high school and my grandma passes. Sophomore year in high school, my grandma passes. I'm going to an all-boys Catholic high school. Never forget, Don Bosco Tech in Rosemead, California. Grandma passes, and man, I tell you, that was one of the toughest things I had ever had to endure up until that point in life. Because you talk about the one person who believed in you, cared for you,
right,
watched over you, was your protector, is now taken from you. And knowing the environment that you live in, that sense of security was now gone.
She was like a foundation for you.
Foundation. But 2 main things happened that year. My grandma passed and my dad got sober.
Wow.
My dad became sober. You may wonder, how'd your dad become sober? Because you hear so many stories of sobriety.
Yeah.
One of my favorite TV shows, Intervention. Love Intervention. Some say yes, some say no. Some receive, some reject, right? But everybody has a different story.
Yeah.
And the story goes, is my mom had set up an intervention for my dad.
Wow.
She tricked him. He thought he was going in the hospital for one thing. Little did he know that his family was sitting there waiting for him.
Wow.
So I know what a true intervention is like.
Yeah.
So when I watch that intervention TV show till this day, my wife and I, that hits home because I know what it's like to see my dad's face when he walked in and was like, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And to say that in that moment, he was open and willing to receive the help that was offered to him. But my dad knew. He knew that if he didn't accept the help, my mom was going to leave him. He knew if he didn't accept the help, that his kids, his 2 boys, were probably no longer going to be around him or involved in his life.
Yeah.
So he was faced with a major life-altering decision. And what I can say, Kris, is he accepted the help. He became sober. And honestly, it probably is the biggest blessing in our entire family's life, because a lot of times you talk about biblically generational curses, right? Or even in life, generational curses, whether it's heart disease, right? Whether it's smoking, cancer. There's so many generational curses and things that are passed down, right? From your parents, your grandparents, you inherit traits, behaviors, in this case, hereditary and addiction and alcoholism.
Yeah.
So, my dad gets sober and you would think like, wow, that's the perfect ending to the story. Like you're raised in an alcoholic home, your grandma passes,
Your dad gets sober.
your dad gets sober. Like wave the white tail, throw it in.
Yeah.
The Mendoza family's good. Like you guys are going to, be on your merry way on the yellow brick road and, onto this new lifestyle and family. And, Kris, I wish I could tell you that that's the way it was. And I think for somebody who maybe wasn't birthed in pain, yes, that would have happened. But you have to remember, I was exposed to so much over so many years that was a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So just because dad became sober, that was great for him and my mom.
Yeah.
But for me, I was carrying all the wreckage of the past. I was carrying all that baggage. So sophomore year, I'll never forget, I switched high schools, okay? I didn't want to go to the all boys Catholic high school anymore. I was over it. They were terrible in sports and I was an athlete. And my mom used to work there and she used to say, Joseph, do you understand how much families pay for their kids to go to school here? And I'm like, yeah, Mom, I don't care. They pay thousands and you get to go for free. Yeah, Mom, I don't care. Why? I want to go be with my friends. I want to go to a public high school. I want to be with my friends and I want to play baseball and basketball with them. Mm-hmm. That was my dream, Kris, because growing up as a kid in Little League, we all played together.
Yeah.
Then in basketball, you play NJB, which I'm sure you're aware of, and a lot of people out there, their sons or daughters play NJB. We all played NJB together. And we all said, when we get to high school, we're going to be like the dream team. Yeah. Like we're all going to be in high school. We're all going to play basketball, baseball together. Well, I was the only one missing. They were all at Pioneer High School in Whittier, California, and I was the only one missing. So I make the jump, and I'll never forget Kris sitting in that counselor's office. The counselor goes, well, Miss Mendoza, your son has enough credits that he could technically graduate from high school right now. So I'm not sure what kind of classes he's planning on taking, but I'm sure we can find some things to put him in. He obviously has to take the required classes, which you and I know are a handful.
Yeah.
So here I go to a public school.
That's a big transition.
Huge transition. Okay. And I'm TAing 2 periods.
Wow.
Which equates to really nothing.
Nothing. Yep.
I get in ASB because I hear in ASB that you can be out of class all the time.
Yeah.
So I jump into ASB my junior and my senior year, and here I am. I'm the activities chairperson. I'm the one overseeing all the pep rallies, all the dances, planning all the stuff. So I'm like the man, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm the man in terms of being a jock, as you would call him in high school in sports. And then I'm the man with ASB. So I'm living this life, right? So I think, or so I call living this life. And, I get exposed to alcohol my junior year in high school. I get exposed to alcohol. And when I say exposed, you may say, well, you were already exposed, right? But I hadn't taken
it, yeah.
Exactly. So I was exposed and I finally accepted and I finally started consuming alcohol junior year in high school. By the time I was a senior in high school, we were partying nonstop. Mm-hmm. Every football game, every weekend, we were partying nonstop. At 17 years old, 17 years old, senior in high school. One night I'm wasted, have a one-night stand. And so many people out there that know exactly what I'm about to share and have probably been through something similar. And those who haven't experienced it, I pray that somebody doesn't have to experience this, because this was like a life-altering situation where I have a one-night stand with this female and she ends up pregnant. Senior in high school. I'm 17 years old. Oof. And I'm faced with a decision. Do I go to college and play Division I baseball? Mm-hmm. Because I had multiple offers to play Division I baseball. I was phenomenal in baseball. I was a pitcher. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to stay back and I'm going to raise this child. And we end up having our firstborn, which his name is Jaden, amazing 25-year-old son. Couldn't ask for a more amazing child today, but he's birthed and we're both 17 years old, Kris, and we're trying to navigate through life. I'm drinking nonstop. I'm partying. She's angry with me. The relationship doesn't work. And, we co-parent to the best you can co-parent at 17, 18, 19 years old, which, as a parent, there's no blue book to parenting.
I mean, and at that point, you're making adult decisions before you're even truly an adult.
Right. So by the grace of God, her mom and dad, my dad's sober now a couple years, and my mom, their marriage is great. Everything's back on track. By the grace of God, we had both sets of parents who really stepped in and assumed that mother-father role responsibility because we were so young.
Right.
We didn't know any better.
Right.
We were teenagers. We were young adults. We did not know any better. I had to start working full time, 18 years old, right out of high school.
Yeah.
Second shift, Compton, California, 2 to 10 at night.
Oh my goodness.
I was working in a rough part of Compton. So here I am working full time because I got to provide.
Yeah.
Here she is working full time because we got to provide. So that's not an ideal situation for a young boy playing sports in high school, dreaming, thinking college, to now no college, and you're going to raise a child.
Yeah.
You talk about life altering, you talk about drastic, you could say any word, and that would be it. But looking back on it, Kris, I would never change or have altered that decision to go to college to play baseball over raising our son, because the relationship that I have with him today at 44 and 25 is absolutely amazing. When I look at the pictures from this past Christmas together with our families and I see how Jordan and Joelle look up to him, Kris, it brings emotion to me because that's still their big brother.
Yeah.
That's still Jaslyn and Jude's big brother. And they don't see him all the time, but I tell you, they look up to him.
And I think what's powerful is that I think a lot of times we make decisions based upon what other people will think.
Right.
And at that time, you really put your son at the center of that decision that you were making.
Right.
And this is before you had even given your life to Christ.
Yeah.
But you understood that you had a responsibility for this new life that you had created, regardless of how that new life came into the world.
Right.
And so you prioritizing your son showed that love that you had for him even before you understood all that it takes to be a good dad.
Right.
And I think that's something for people to know is you're a fantastic dad.
Thank you.
I see you with all of your kids. I don't see you treat any one of them differently. You show the same love to them, and to see how you father them and guide them and lead them is an amazing thing. So I think that's a powerful part of your testimony.
And the part that is very important is when I had to go break the news to my parents, right? Haven't even graduated. Senior in high school. We haven't even hit graduation ceremony. I had to go tell my mom and dad and break the news to them. And I'll never forget, my dad didn't talk to me for almost 3 weeks, Kris. And the reason why he didn't talk to me, it wasn't because he was angry at the decision and the choice. He saw his son's hopes and dreams of playing baseball out the window.
Yeah.
That's what he saw.
Yeah.
He didn't talk to me for 3 weeks. And it was the hardest 3 weeks of my life because that was the same guy that my brother and I always wanted approval from.
Yeah.
Most boys who transition to teenagers and to young men, they're always looking for their father's approval.
100%.
And there's nothing like a father's approval.
That's right.
And for you women out there who, are daughter, you're always looking for mom's approval. And we always wanted his approval. And despite all the dysfunction that was in our family up until my dad getting sober, to not have his approval in that instance, when you're used to him always supporting you and backing you, was tough.
Yeah.
And he finally came to the terms and the realization that I was not going to go to college and that I was going to stay back. I was going to raise this child. We were going to be committed, even though her and I were not going to be in a relationship together, that we were going to be committed as a mom and a dad to doing our best to raise a child, all while my alcoholic behavior, tendencies, drinking was just spiraling out of control, spiraling out of control. You know, Kris, at age 21, you know, most people look forward to age 21. Why do they look forward to the age 21?
It's legal to drink.
It's legal to drink. Well, little Joseph over here wasn't really looking that forward to age 21 because I was already a full-blown alcoholic at 21 years old. And you may say, like, how did you know that? I was drinking non-stop. I was dependent on it. And that's how I knew that I had an issue. 21 years of age, I get my first DUI. I'm at a house party in Seal Beach, California. And the reason why I like telling this story is because of how it played out. Never to glorify the amount of trouble that I got in, because each story has a unique purpose.
Yeah.
And each story connects to why I'm sitting here with you now. Seal Beach, California. I have to go move my car. We've been drinking all day long. I walk outside, trunks, no flip-flops, no shirt, no nothing, just trunks on me. I'm just going to go move my car. Keys in hand, flip a U-turn, scratch my rim on the curb.
Oh my goodness.
And for you men out there, scratching a rim.
Scratch those rims, man.
I mean, Kris, I know even you right now, you scratch your rim, you're probably pulling over saying, what's the damage?
Yeah.
What did I do? So what did I do? I pulled over because I had to assess the damage. And little did I know, there was a cop at the intersection making a turn to my direction and saw it all play out.
Wow.
I get out, no shoes, barefoot, nighttime, checking my car, and it was a female cop, and I'll never forget. She comes behind me, flashes the lights, and I'm like, oh man. But I'm thinking in my head, like, I can manipulate, I can get out of anything. I'm literally in that complex, right across the street. I'm right there. Like, come on, you just let me make a left, and I'm good. She doesn't let me make a left, and they take me in. So, first DUI, turned 21 in 2000, and I'm going to fast track a little bit here. So, first DUI, 2000, slap on the hand, no big deal.
Yeah.
Mind my P's and Q's, do what the courts ask of me, and I'm good to go. 2002, I get DUI number 2. So now I'm like, okay, you know, with anything in life, you make one bad choice. Okay, there's no problem. Okay. Second time, I'm like, all right, this is interesting. Maybe there's a problem, maybe not. I get a harder slap this time, right? Second DUI, 2002. And shortly after that, 2007. So you could think of, do the math there, 2000, 2002, 2 years. 2002, 2007.
You made it 5 years.
5 years. So I'm good, right? Like 5 years, everything's good. First one, second one, all the, classes, courses, everything's done. Like I'm back on track. I'm good to go. With knowing in the back of my head that in the state of California, DUIs stay on your record for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I know all the laws, all the rules about all the DUI stuff. So 2007, I get number 3. And I knew that at that point I was in some serious trouble, but I also knew that I had a really, really bad problem. And in 2007, I made the conscious choice and decision to say, I'm going to get sober. And I remember, a lot of it was I had to see a probation officer. I was on formal probation. So a lot of the formalities were that I couldn't drink. I had to breathalyze. I had to do all this stuff, right? Which, for the average person is tough. But for me, like when the going gets tough, the heat gets turned on. That's when I operate best. So I end up staying sober, Kris, 2007. I end up staying sober for almost 2 years.
Now in 2007, you said kind of that was a little bit of a turning point.
Yeah.
Now, what was there anything in your personal life that you would say triggered you to take it more seriously, or was it kind of the consequence of the situation that made you take it more seriously?
Well, obviously, the consequences were more harsh, but I think at that time, when something happens a third time, it's like 3 strikes and you're out.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it was like, okay, I knew it was something greater.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there was an issue. I knew there was deep underlying pain. I knew there was a lot behind it, but it was just so much for me to really come to terms and come to reality with.
Yeah.
Anyone who struggles from addiction, the hardest thing is to admit it. The hardest thing is to say, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
The hardest thing to say is, I'm a drug addict. The hardest thing to say is, I'm addicted to pornography. The hardest thing to do is admitting.
Yeah.
And for me, it was so hard to admit. But for so many people out there right now, Kris, that'll watch this episode, you know, whether it's today, a week, a month, 2 years from now, it doesn't matter. The hardest choice is always admitting.
And I think it's because before you admit, the problem is outside.
Right.
But the moment that you say that you admit that you have the problem,
Mm-hmm.
now you internalize the problem and you realize the problem starts here.
Right.
And until you get to that point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired,
Right. Which is the definition of insanity.
which is the definition of insanity, nothing will change.
Nothing, you know, and up until that point, I wasn't sick and tired of being sick and tired. I just knew that there was an issue.
Mm-hmm.
There was like that red flag, that warning sign, that flashing hazard light, like, hey, kind of like, wake up, you know,
Yeah.
wake up. This could be worse. And, you know, I've been through so many DUI classes. I've been through so many AA meetings. I've had sponsors, and, you know, there's something they always say. And when I say they, I'm not saying it they in a negative way, because I don't attend AA today. AA doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But AA works for so many other individuals, and it's an amazing organization that
Yeah.
saves people's life. For
Yeah.
me, it was about my faith. For me, it was about my accountability partners. And for me, I took a different path and direction, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But they always talk about the disease will always spiral back to where you were or worse. And think about that. In 2002, I thought it was bad, but no way did I ever believe it would get to the point of 2007.
Yeah.
So looking back and having this conversation now, I can look you in the face and say, it is 100% true that from 2002 to 2007, the only difference this time was it took 5 years, or the first time it took 2 years. But in that 5 years, so much wreckage, so much damage, so much heartache and pain
Yeah.
was going on in that 5 year span that when I hit 2007, I was far worse in every area of my life than 2002. Far worse. So then I make this decision that, you know what? I'm really going to try this sobriety thing. You know, I've been around it. I've heard it. My dad's sober. Now you have to remember, my dad gets sober. I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm now 2007. I graduated in 97. My dad's sober almost 12 years to this point.
Yeah.
The number one question that I always get asked is like, did you not think of getting sober sooner because of your dad? And I was like, no, like I never looked at my dad being sober like as an indicator that I needed to become sober. I looked at it as he had a problem and I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So as an addict, you're always looking for what separates you.
Yeah. You're trying to minimize the problem you
He
have.
had the drinking problem.
Yeah.
He was the one that almost lost his marriage. He was the one who did drugs. He was the one who ruined this. But never would I put myself in that same category,
Got it.
in that same field. Never. You're always looking for the difference.
Yeah.
Looking for the difference. So I can say, nope, he did that, but I'm not that bad.
Right.
So at that point, he's been sober 12 years. I mean, come on, Kris, 12 years is a long time.
That's solid.
Anybody right now who's watching this and you're sober one day, that is amazing.
It's huge.
So many people will text me and be like, I'm sober 30 days. And they get intimidated because they think someone who has 11 and a half years sobriety, they almost approach it like, I'm not at your level. I'm not at your status. But the truth is, Kris, and this is the God honest truth, it is hard at 30 days
Right.
to stay sober.
Because you haven't developed the habit of
It is
yet.
hard.
Yeah.
So what has become a lifestyle for me today
Yeah.
is not a lifestyle for somebody at day 1, day 30, day 60, or day 90.
Yep.
That's not a lifestyle.
Yeah.
They're drying up. They're drying out.
The itch
They're
is
trying to
still there.
navigate through
Yeah.
society. AA talks to you about how people, places, and things. Are you willing to change people, places, and things?
Yeah.
At 30 days, you're not thinking about changing people, places, and things. You're just trying to figure out life.
Yeah.
Right? And you're looking and that same liquor store is on the corner. You're looking at that billboard and it still shows Corona. You're still looking at your buddies and they're still in that same bar.
Yeah.
Those people, places, and things, they don't change.
That's right.
You as the individual have to change. So if you've been sober 1 day or 30 days, I
Fantastic.
congratulate you.
You're on the
because
right road.
I know how hard it is to stay sober. So to anybody who feels like 1 year's not enough, in God's eyes, you're more than enough.
Yeah.
And 1 year is more than enough. You know, so you look at my story, 2007, sober 2 years. And this is what I told myself. I said, I'm going to drink again, but I'm going to drink on my terms. Because remember, I'm a guy who always has it figured out.
Yeah. You're in control.
Master plan, master manipulator, master liar, master cheater, master everything. So my thing was, I'm going to drink for a special occasion. And this is what I would tell myself. It's going to be a big wedding. It's going to be for a funeral. It's going to be for something gigantic. And that's going to be like my coming out party and my validation to drink again. And it's going to be okay. Why? Because I can say I was sober 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So here I am trying to beat the system again. I was sober 2.5 years. I'm going to have a coming out party someday, sometime. Don't know what it's going to be. Don't know where it's going to be. And it ended up being a 5-day cruise to Ensenada.
Oh, wow.
A girl I was dating at the time said, let's go on a cruise. And I said, you know what? This is the moment. This was that special occasion that really all along, Kris, I've been building towards.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. I've been building towards it. Was I working sobriety? Was I working a program? No. Was I sober? Sure. Some will say, you just weren't drinking. That's correct. I just wasn't putting something in my body or my system that was altering the way I think or I felt or I acted.
Yeah.
So I knew at that point, that trip, that was the golden ticket. And you want to know why? Because I told myself, you don't got to drive.
Yeah.
You're going to be on a boat sailing. You been on a cruise?
No.
You know all the alcohol's included?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know that.
So you talk about like that ding, ding, ding moment in life where it's like, oh my gosh, like I don't got to drive, a guy with 3 DUIs. I can drink and it's included to an alcoholic. Like you think about these things.
You took out the consequence, basically.
This was an alcoholic. This was Joseph's dream of how this was going to play out and how I was going to incorporate myself back into the drinking world. So I go on this cruise, Kris, start drinking. I'll never forget. We're in Ensenada and the boat's supposed to leave. And who do you think was the last passenger to get on the boat was? Do you know that the boat was 2 minutes away from leaving me because I was so wasted that I could barely make it back to the boat? And that is a honest story.
Wow.
Barely made it back to the boat. Don't even remember what happened the rest of that day, night. All I know is I made it back on the boat, finished the trip. It was like a drunken haze, but that was the golden ticket that really set me back into that vicious cycle, into that spiral. So, 2007, we fast forward, it's 2009, almost going into 2010. Kris, 2011. What took me 2 years the first time, what took me 5 years the second time, took me 1 year the last time. Because I went back to that place so dang fast. You would think, but you were sober 2.5 years. How did you go back to the same place you were in 2007 so quick? It happened and unraveled so fast, where February, what's Valentine's Day, Kris?
February 14th.
14th, 2011. I will never forget that day, because that is the day that will and has forever changed my life. For most people, it's here, it's I love you, it's going on the fancy dates, it's taking your spouse or your loved one or your partner. I found myself in a jail cell. I got DUI number 4. By the grace of God, I had just dropped a friend off in Fullerton before I got in an accident that would change my life forever. I had just dropped him off, Kris. And I play this out till this day. Like, God, what happens if I never would have dropped him off? What happens if I wouldn't have made that right? What happens if I would have kept going straight on Baston Cherry and not had taken him home? All those things always play in my head, the what ifs, right? But it all happened. You always talk about you're created for a purpose, on purpose, right?
Yeah.
Things happen on purpose, for purpose.
Yeah.
I was meant to drop him off. And here I am, brand new car, Volkswagen Jetta, bought it 5 days prior.
Oh my goodness.
Brand new car, Kris. Here I am partying in downtown Fullerton, and I'm wasted, and I'm back behind the wheel. I drop him off. For those of you who are in Southern California, I always like to paint the geographical location because it always helps with people, who may be local. Is I'm right coming from Fullerton. You're up Baston Cherry by the Summit House.
Yep.
And then you're coming down Baston Cherry, heading into Brea.
Yep.
I lived in Brea with my mom and dad. Right where Craig Regional Park is, that's Elm Street. You make a left right there, and I'm home. I crash 1 minute from our house on Baston Cherry. And I'll never forget. I'm going 85 miles an hour. Wow. At 3 o'clock in the morning, brand new car. I go to switch lanes. I didn't see a car. And then by the time I did realize the car, don't ask me how I didn't hit the car. It was definitely God. It was definitely an angel. There was definitely something protecting me and that other car with passengers. Because by the time I noticed it, I felt like I was on top of the car.
Wow.
I jerked to the right, no braking, 85 miles an hour, straight in to a brown telephone pole. Kris, it splits my car in half. The brown telephone pole, if you can see me on camera, is right here. Center console right here.
Oh my goodness. Unbelievable.
Splits my car, brown telephone pole. I have a bloody nose from the impact.
Yeah.
And bruised ribs later from the impact. But somebody who lived on the street, they come, they pull me out, lay me on the sidewalk, and I'll never forget, and I can't use the verbiage, but I'll never forget the Fullerton cop who first showed up. He said, "You effing should not be alive. You should be dead."
Wow.
And I'll never forget walking to the cop car and looking at that car saying, that's a car that many of us see on cops or high-speed chases or in movies, and never does the person walk away. Never does the person walk away. They're loaded into an ambulance. There's a body bag. There's something other than walking away. But here I am walking away, my own two legs, my own power in the back of a cop car. And I'm just looking. The last glimpse I ever got of that car was, I don't even know how I'm still alive. Because I tell you, my mom never saw the car. My dad never saw the car. Felicia never saw the car. I never wanted any of them to see the car. Because had they saw the car, that would have scarred them for life. Because they would have said, there's no way you're okay. There's absolutely no way. So at that point, Kris, I knew I was in major trouble. I mean, one of my favorite games to play is Monopoly. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who know Monopoly, you know, it's don't pass go directly to jail.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't passing go. Mm-hmm. I knew I wasn't collecting $200. I knew my butt was going straight to jail.
You realized that pretty much right away?
In that split moment. Mm-hmm. In that moment, everything that had built up to that one night, I knew I was in serious trouble. Like at that point, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the manipulation, it was all out the window because there's no way you can manipulate yourself out of the back of a cop car.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to manipulate yourself out of a jail cell. And there's no way you're going to walk into a courthouse in front of a judge that has already seen that you've been in this same courthouse 2 times and you're going to manipulate a judicial system. Absolutely no way. So I knew I was in big trouble, Kris. And, you know, at the time, I was working for Bank of America Corporate in Brea, 7 years, worked my way up in the mortgage department there, you know, was doing very well because here I found myself being that functioning alcoholic, like that one individual in my life that I saw all the time. And remember what I told you, what I thought was normal, I thought was normal. You drink, you get up, you go to work. You drink, you get up and handle your responsibilities. You drink, you still got to take care of your kids. You drink, you still got to operate and do life, right? So here I am, this functioning person that's going about life. And, you know, it comes to a screeching halt. Here I am, I'm taken to jail. And at that point in time, Kris, I didn't know what to do. You know, when you talk about hitting rock bottom, everybody's bottom is different that struggles with addiction. My bottom is a bottom that anytime I meet somebody or talk to somebody, including my own brother who's going to be sober over 5 years this year, including my own brother when he struggled, is I always used to tell him, you don't have to go through what I went through. You can stop this now. Yeah. You don't have to get 1, 2, 3, 4 jail. You don't have to go through that. Let my story be a story that helps impact you where you can say, dang, I don't want to experience that. So when I share this with you, it's never to glorify the trouble. It's never to glorify being in a cop car. It's never to glorify being in jail. It's to talk about the redemption power, the restoration power, and what God can do to radically change and do to an individual's life. And that's me. So the story that I always want people to remember is if God can do it for me, he could do it for my family. He could do it for you. Amen. He could do it for your family. You could be the Joseph of your family. I just happen to be the Joseph of my family, and I happen to be named Joseph. So when I look at it now, do I think it's by coincidence? Absolutely not. I know that I'm the Joseph to my family. Has that been told to me? Absolutely, but I know that today. You talk about things happen for a reason, not by coincidence. I'm laying on my bunk. I'm on the top bunk, got my bunkie underneath me. And I'll never forget, it's like everybody sees on TV, you know, the jail bars have books. Like that's what you see in movies and stuff. That's real. So I remember one night I turned around and I was glancing at the book. And you know the book because you know my story, and I have the book sitting in my nightstand. This green purpose-driven life book by Rick Warren and a Bible were right next to each other. I glanced and something brought me back to those two things. Pulled them both out. Bible's in my hand. How do I start reading the Bible? Like, I don't read. I wasn't a scholar. I hate reading. Flip to the back of the Bible. It says, Bible reading plan. Start in the book of John. And I said, I've never taken direction my whole life. I think this is a good time to take direction and start in the book of John and go through this Bible plan that's in the back.
Welcome to Cross Culture, real life, real talk, real wisdom. At Cross Culture, we believe that if we can change the way that we think, we can allow ourselves to align with God's purpose for our life and then impact the culture around us. This is Cross Culture.
The story that I always want people to remember is if God can do it for me, he could do it for my family. He could do it for you.
Amen.
He could do it for your family. You could be the Joseph of your family. I just happen to be the Joseph of my family, and I happen to be named Joseph. So when I look at it now, do I think it's by coincidence? Absolutely not. I know that I'm the Joseph to my family. Has that been told to me? Absolutely, but I know that today.
Yeah.
So when I get in trouble, Kris, I'm fighting this case because they want to give me 18 months in prison. In the state of California, 4 DUIs, mandatory 18 months in prison. There's no negotiating. You want to hire an attorney, spend all kinds of money, fine, you can, go ahead. That's not my recommendation because the law in the state of California is your 4th DUI, 18 months minimum in prison. So that's where my mindset's at. 18 months. It's a matter of time. Is the judge going to be sympathetic towards me? Are they going to work with me? And I'm just like, I'm praying and hoping for the best at this point. And I'll never forget 7 court trips it took. And my mom and Felicia had never been to any of my other court trips because I always told them, I don't want you guys going to see me in jail. I don't want you to see what I look like in this jumpsuit. I don't want you to, this is not how I want you to remember me.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a better version of me. And it's not going to be this person who's going to be in a cage in a courtroom. So the 7th court trip, they come. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting in the cage. And those of you who don't know what a cage is, it's that little box that looks like a cage in a courtroom. And I'll never forget, the judge looks at me and goes, Mr. Mendoza, and this is how they talk. Mr. Mendoza, today's your lucky day. And I'm thinking, am I going home? Because I'm so hopeful, right? Am I getting released today? Like I've already been in jail 6 months to this point.
Oh, wow.
So I'm thinking, they're going to let me go. I've been a good boy 6 months. Like, this is my day.
Yeah.
And he goes, and I never forget, he's pointing at me. I'm going to grant you your wish. And I'm like thinking like, my wish? Like, not too many people have wishes in jail. You know what I mean? Other than getting out. He goes, I'm going to grant you your wish. I'm going to let you go to rehab. And I was like, Lord, this has to be you.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm not going to give you 18 months in prison. I'm going to let you go to rehab. The previous 3 DUIs, never one time did I go to rehab. And I said, Your Honor, I can't thank you enough. He goes, but there's one catch. And I said, oh man, here it comes. You got to serve 12 months in jail. And then I'm going to send you to rehab for 1 year. So 1 + 1 is 2. But I'll tell you this, A year of jail and a year of rehab with Jesus in there radically changed my life. You say, well, that's 2 years. You could have did 18 months and been out on maybe on good time. But who's to know what would have happened in prison?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a
Plus
reason why I didn't go to prison.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. And I never forget my mom and Felicia looked so devastated. And I'm like, no, like thumbs up, like it's okay, like no. And then I later talked to Felicia and she goes, you know, why were you so positive? And I said, and mind you, we weren't married at this time, Kris. Like the story is Felicia didn't know I had 2 DUIs, let alone 3 DUIs. So when I get in trouble, she's kind of like, why are you in trouble? Because all I did was lie and manipulate and I wasn't honest. And, you know, it threw her all for a loop. And she goes, why are you okay with it? And I said, you know what? I've been in here 6 months. I can do 6 months. I said, I found God in here and I know God is on my side. There is a reason why I didn't go to prison. And there's a reason why God has me here. And I'm just going to continue to seek him behind bars. He's already been moving in my life. I'm just going to trust him in this season and in this process that he knows what he's doing.
Now let's key in on that. You said you found God. Let's talk about how you found God in prison.
You know, a lot of times this is the part of my testimony, Kris, where I get a lot of skeptics and people who question this. And, you know, as brothers in Christ, we're never called to judge somebody's story. Mm-hmm. If somebody says they found God, you know, in a bus on the way up to San Francisco, that's where they found God. If they found him on a boat, if they found him on a mountain, they found him. Where you find God and where you meet God, that is part of your story.
That's right.
For me, February 14th was Valentine's Day. By the time I get processed in the jail, by the time I actually get into a barrack, by the time I get situated, you're talking about 5 days later. And you talk about things happen for a reason, not by coincidence. I'm laying on my bunk. I'm on the top bunk, got my bunkie underneath me. And I'll never forget, it's like everybody sees on TV, you know, the jail bars have books. Like that's what you see in movies and stuff. That's real. So I remember one night I turned around and I was glancing at the book. And you know the book because you know my story and I have the book sitting in my nightstand. This green purpose-driven life book by Rick Warren and a Bible were right next to each other. I glanced and something brought me back to those two things. Pulled them both out. Bible's in my hand. How do I start reading the Bible? Like, I don't read. I wasn't a scholar. I hate reading. Mm-hmm. Flip to the back of the Bible. It says, Bible reading plan. Start in the book of John. And I said, I've never taken direction my whole life. I think this is a good time to take direction and start in the book of John and go through this Bible plan that's in the back. So I start in the book of John, which is in the gospel. Partner and pair that with the purpose-driven life. It was over, Kris. It was a game changer. You know, I get emotional thinking about it because you don't think that God can meet you in the deepest, darkest moments of your life. And I can honestly say that God met me at my deepest, darkest moment in my life. He met me. Well, it wasn't this aha moment, this cloud didn't flash, this angel didn't hit me. It came in the form of a purpose-driven life book, and it came in the form of a Bible. I had to pick him up and do the work. I had to pick him up and start reading. Holding him wasn't going to do it for me. And the transformation process wasn't going to take place unless I started to do the work. And I started to do the work. I read that purpose-driven life book 3 times in jail. I read that Bible 2 times in jail. I started praying with a group of Christian guys in jail every day. We were having Bible studies in jail. Anytime they would call for church service, I was the first one to that door, and in worship, in Bible study. Anything they offered, I was just immersed in it.
Yeah.
Because this is what I told myself. Joseph, you gave your entire life to drinking. You need to give your entire life to God. You gave your entire life and everything you had to drinking. You sacrificed everything. You sacrificed your kids, your job, your family. You sacrificed everything that was precious and valuable to you in your life to chase the next drink. I want you to sacrifice everything for me and chase and pursue me and watch how it will change your life.
Fantastic. And I think that's such a powerful part of your testimony, because everything up until that point had become your identity.
Right.
And so you had to hit this wall of finally the consequences catching up to your actions.
Right.
But God doesn't treat us as our sins deserve.
No.
And his grace and mercy are new every morning.
Right.
And so God meets you in prison and changes your mindset.
Right.
Now you start to understand that you're created for a purpose.
Right.
And then you start to align yourself with that, and that starts to begin the transformation. So talk me through kind of that last part of now you're really on fire for God.
Right.
You have that understanding of who God is. You understand that God has a purpose for you. What does that do to your remaining time that you're there in prison?
Well, you know, as you start to go through the Bible, you really start to find how so many stories in the Bible really relate to your personal life. And the book of Job has always become my favorite book in the Bible, because look at what Job went through.
Yeah.
Look at the pain he went through, the sacrifice, but look at how he was used in such a mighty way because he persevered. And when I read the book of Job and when I started to read certain scriptures, certain books, it just really started to speak to me. Like when we think of Ephesians and we think of the whole, putting on the whole armor of God.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard that scripture in your lifetime?
Oh,
How many times have you heard a sermon on that?
Yeah.
How many times have you heard a Bible study? But when you can honestly say that you know what it's like, Kris, I know what it's like to put the full armor of God on, be behind bars, and know that God is going to protect me.
Yeah.
Most people would say, but you're in jail. How do you know that? But what's faith?
Yeah.
The unseen.
That's right.
Right? So I know what it's like to say, I had the full armor of God on. I knew I was protected in jail. And you hear my voice elevating because I was convicted, I was convinced, and I knew that I knew that I knew that I was protected in jail.
Yeah.
I knew that God had my back. I knew that nothing was going to happen to me as long as I continued to pursue him and put him first. So, you know, something really vital happens. And when I share this, this is the story that no one can ever challenge me on whether or not God is real. So after I'd gotten sentenced, some guys came back and they're like, hey man, there's a loophole. And you know, guys in jail, they know loopholes. You know, we all know loopholes.
Yeah.
And they said, hey man, there's a loophole in the system. When they tell you they're going to send you to rehab and like they tell you they're going to come to jail and they're going to pick you up and they're going to take, there's a loophole. If the clerk in the courtroom doesn't write and push the right buttons, they let you go scot-free. And I'm like, come on, this stuff don't happen to me. Like no one lets Joseph don't go scot-free. Like, no, I've been busted every single time.
Yeah.
So Kris, you talk about, is God real? So I knew my release date. They don't call your name until like 2 a.m. That's what time you get released from jail. For all of you wondering, why do you get released at 2 a.m. from jail? There's 2 main reasons why you get released at 2, 3 a.m. from jail. One is that's the deputy's shift change. And the second is the county gets money for you for the next day. So if you stay past midnight, they get money for you for the next day. So those are the 2 main reasons why you get released from jail at weird hours of the morning. You don't get released like at 4 o'clock and make it home for dinner. So I'll never forget. I'm on the phone with Felicia and I'm like, hey babe, like we're excited. Her and I are doing amazing. Haven't seen each other in almost a year, and our spirits are built. She's found a home church with my parents. God's moving in her life in a mighty way. And we ain't even together. And I said, well, babe, tonight's the night, I'll talk to you maybe when I get to rehab. I'll write you a letter. Don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, so we hang up on the phone, lights out, 10 o'clock. Obviously I can't sleep because I'm antsy and I know my name's going to get called, and it's about 2:30 in the morning and you hear the intercom come on and it's Mendoza, roll it up. And I'm like, this is it. So, in jail, you have all but 2 minutes to roll it up and get to the door. And let me tell you, if you don't roll it up and get to that door in 2 minutes, they will make you stay in there longer. When you talk about leaving your past behind, when you talk about leaving your baggage behind, when you talk about leaving earthly possessions behind and going forth with this new mentality perspective on life, I grabbed 2 things and took them with me. I grabbed the Bible. I took 3 things with me. I grabbed the Bible, I grabbed the Purpose Driven Life book, and I grabbed every single letter that Felicia had written to me. Everything else, I didn't care about. I need to take the Bible, I need to take the Purpose Driven Life book, and I got to take these letters. I grabbed the 3 of them. Everybody, 200-man barrack, everybody hugging me. Everybody hugging me. Man, we love you. Because they saw the person that I was in a year's time there. And guys were looking to me for hope, for inspiration, for guidance, for prayer.
Wow.
And here I go out. And from the time you go out that door to the time you process out, it's about an hour time, because you got to go through certain things. You got to go get your property. Now, mind you, Kris, putting those clothes on from the accident a year ago was tough, because there you find yourself where it all began.
Yeah.
What led you to this point, this moment. Bloody clothes. Put the clothes on, because you ain't going to walk out with no clothes. Put the clothes on. Then you go to the next room. You got a fingerprint. They got to run your background because they got to make sure you have no warrants and no holds. And that's where a lot of guys get caught and they get sent right back in because they have warrants or holds, or they get taken to a different jail or different county. So I get through there. Then you get to your possessions. Car keys, cell phone, wallet, belt, things like that. Get all my possessions. Then the last thing is you sign for everything. It's like you sign saying everything's good. I got everything back. Nothing's wrong. So you can't, come back later and say something happened.
Yeah.
And then there's a famous button they push. And it's the loudest unlocking of a door sound you will ever hear.
Yeah.
And when that door unlocks and pops, it's like you're scot-free. But in my mind, I'm thinking there's somebody waiting for me on the other side of that door. Remember, I'm going to rehab. The judge told me you're going to go straight from jail and you're going to go to rehab. So my mindset is there's somebody waiting for me on the other side of that door to grab me by my hand and say, hey, Joseph, nice to meet you. We're going to rehab. It's going to be all great. Bells with. So that's what I'm expecting. I open that door. There's nobody there. And now I'm thinking the loophole. I'm like, wow. So you go down, and I know they call it like the walk of fame is what, when you get out of jail, it's like the walk of fame.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the kind of walk of fame you guys, want to experience. So I make the left, and then you get to the bottom to where the lobby is, and I'm like, there's nobody in the lobby. I'm like, wow. Okay, this is interesting. Well, maybe I'm going to walk outside at 3:30 in the morning. Maybe they're going to be in a van, and they're going to jump out and greet me with the red carpet. Walk outside. There's nobody, Kris.
Wow.
Nobody. I meet this individual in a car. He lets me use his cell phone. I call Felicia and she's like crying. She's like, "Are you joking? Like you said this could possibly happen." And I said, "Babe, I promise I'm here and nobody is here to get me. It is 3:30 in the morning and I'm freezing too. And I need my mom and my dad to come get me." So we get my mom and dad on three-way. My mom and dad come and pick me up. Kris, you want to know if God is real? Let me tell you. That's Friday morning. I called the rehab. "Hey, it's Joseph Mendoza. You guys didn't come pick me up. Like, what happened?" They're like, "We don't come pick you up." What do? I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get taken back to jail. They're like, "Can you report?" Listen to this. "Can you report to the rehab Monday morning at 10 a.m.?
Wow.
I said, "Wait a minute. Today's Friday, so I don't got to come till Monday?" And they're like, "You don't have to come till Monday. Can you come Monday at 10 a.m.? I said, "I will be there Monday at 9:30 a.m. Hang up the phone with them.
Wow.
Kris, all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday with my family that I hadn't seen in over a year. You tell me God's not real? Only God could have pulled that one off.
To give you that time.
To give me that time. And let me tell you, that time was so needed because that time propelled me into rehab and it gave me that extra boost. It gave me that extra confidence, that motivation. It gave me that God is real. He's for me, not against me. Through him, anything. I believed it. Man, I was on fire after that. I believed it. And I said, "I'm going to sell out. I'm going to do everything for you, God, because you made a way where there wasn't supposed to be a way." Here I go home with my family and I get to spend time with everybody after a year of being in jail.
So that gave you kind of a frame of reference of everything you're fighting for and everything you're doing it for.
He gave me that sweet taste of, look at how life can be. If you just trust me, this is how your life can be. Just trust me. I went to rehab Monday, 9:30 in the morning, suitcase packed, hug Felicia, kiss Felicia, parted. Let me tell you, I at that point, Kris, my spiritual endurance was built so high. I knew at that point I could take anything on.
Yeah.
I knew I could endure anything. If God got me through the first DUI, through the second, through the third, through the accident, through a year of county jail.
Yeah.
Which I later found out that people were saying, you probably would have been better off going to prison because you wouldn't have had to deal with all the politics in county jail. A year in county jail and a year in rehab.
Wow.
And I'll never forget when I started to get visitation and we started to go through counseling as a family and as a couple. And, then I was able to finally see my kids. They were letting the kids come and visit me. And, I'll never forget about like 7 months into rehab, my parents come to visit me and visitation was on Sunday. And I'll never forget, my parents are like, "We need to talk to you." And I'm like, "Okay, like what's up?" Like, I've been sober a year and a half. God's moving. This is what you always wanted. You always wanted a sober son on fire for the Lord. And my parents go, "Dad and I decided that when you get out of rehab, that you can no longer live with us. That we need to put our foot down. We're proud of you. We love you. But you need to grow up and you need to be out of our house. We're not going to take you back in when you're done." And I was shocked, Kris. I was like, wow, that was like the first blow of like, wow, because I'm thinking like everything now is like given to me, right?
Yeah.
Not knowing that you still have to earn things.
Yeah.
And that was tough because you take yourself out of society for 2 years. You don't hop back into society, no matter how on fire I was for the Lord.
Yeah.
You still have to go through life.
Right.
Right. And being out of society for 2 years and then coming out of rehab and having to get, Kris, I had to get reacclimated with everything.
Yeah.
do you understand that I didn't know what it was like to sleep in a normal bed? Like the things that we take for granted
Right.
as human beings and individual, a roof over our head, a comfortable bed, blankets, plural, home cooked meals, doing your own laundry. There's so many things that we take for granted as human beings and individuals. Kris, I know what it's like to savor my bed at night. I know what it's like to savor the house that God's blessed us with. I know what it's like to savor this relationship because I'm used to destroying relationships. So I know what it's like to do my part in this relationship because I care about you and I love you as an individual, as a human being, as a husband, as a father. So I know what it's like now to value relationships because it's these relationships with God that help keep me sober.
Yeah.
It's my relationship with you because you're an accountability partner. You help me. You're a spiritual accountability partner to somebody who didn't know what that was like.
Yeah.
So for me, I value relationship today because I didn't go to AA. I didn't find sobriety that way. I found sobriety through trusting the Lord, and I found sobriety in great human beings like yourself who I know that are going to guide me down the right path, who are going to help me make the right choices as a father. That when I fail as a husband, you're going to help pick me up and show me. It's these individuals like you, spiritual accountability partners are vital for me.
Yeah.
Vital. They're essential for me. So how do I stay sober today? How have I made it 11 and a half years sober? First of all, I have an amazing family. Do you know that my dad will be sober 30 years this March?
Wow.
30 years in 2 months. I'm 44. He's been sober half my life, more than half my life. And it's crazy when you reflect back on that because that's really where it all started.
Yeah.
That's where the Mendoza family was changed. It just took me a little bit more time to catch on.
Yeah.
Then you look at my brother, sober 5 years this year. He almost died 3 times. Had to rush him to the hospital. 0.32 blood alcohol level. My cousin and I have to rush him to Kaiser. The doctor says, you should be dead. So now here I was told, you should be dead. Here he was told, you should be dead. And now God's using us to magnify his kingdom and his glory. And how cool was it to see my brother sitting in service the other night?
Yeah.
And he's not a Jesus guy. He's not a God guy. He's not a faith guy. That's just not his cup of tea. He does his own thing. But to see him in service the other night when my mom told me, when she walked in the door and said, Mike's going to be here. I'm like, Mike who? She's like, Mike, your brother. I'm like,
Yeah.
huh? Standing at the door, and there comes my brother and my nephew walking in, and I'm just like, wow, God, we've come a long way.
And I think that's something so powerful. I've had the privilege of meeting your parents before. And your mom, talking with her about your testimony.
Right.
To see how fervent her prayers were for you. And Felicia as well. The Bible says the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous avails much, and it accomplishes what the person prayed for. And so we don't always have control over the timing.
No.
We can't turn a switch on and off, but God reached you at the right time, at the right season. And I think the other aspect of why you've been able to maintain your sobriety is that you're not a inactive Christian. I think a lot of times so many Christians spend their life on the bleachers.
Right.
Watching life go on, watching ministry go on. But I think because of your sports background, you couldn't sit on the sidelines.
No, you can't be on the shelf. You can't be on the sideline. You got to be in the game. You got to be in the game. And that's literally how I operate. So it is the sports mindset, right, of being in the game. And you always say that faith is a contact sport. if you're getting into faith or spirituality or Christianity, like don't expect it to be a non-contact sport.
Yeah.
Because I'm still getting hit. You're still getting hit. Because when we're doing things to magnify the kingdom and we're making differences in people's lives, the enemy's always going to attack us. There's always going to be an opposition to the mission, as Pastor Tim says.
Yeah.
You know, and for those of you who are struggling, people are praying for you. And we don't understand those prayers when you're the one struggling. But sitting here today with you, I know I would see my mom pray. I would see her in tears. I would see her in shambles. I would hear her on the phone from jail. And to think, like, I look back on it now and I'm like, dang, Mom, your prayers came through. They weren't in your timing. They were in God's timing. But she wasn't the only one praying for me. There's a lot of people praying for me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people praying for people right now that are struggling with addiction, that are struggling with anything in life. But it's hard to receive those prayers when you're the one wrapped up in the situation. You're the one wrapped up in the disease. You're the one wrapped up in whatever it is that, you know, you're going through. And it's amazing, Kris, because, you know, to see that all God has done, and there's no way I can go through this cross-culture interview and not talk about my amazing wife. There's this, I think you and I have been blessed.
Amen.
We have been blessed. Your story is not my story, but behind every great man, there's a more amazing woman.
Amen. Amen.
And
to
the
that.
fact that Felicia stood with me after all the lying, all the cheating, all the manipulation, all the story making, the fact that she even considered, and I love this because about a year and a half in, when I was in rehab, we would just pray and we would say, you know what, God, we're just two puzzle pieces. When I'm done, when this is done, whatever done looks like, if our pieces were meant to connect, they're going to connect because of you, not because I want to connect it or not because she wants to connect it.
Yeah.
If these are the adjoining pieces that are meant to connect, it's going to be because you see a future of impact that her and I are going to make together. So there was never any selfish ambition, any selfish reason, anything of a selfishness list behind her and I coming together. It was, if you want this, God, then you make it happen. If you want this, then you're going to help see us through, because this has not been easy. It's not been easy, because you talk about a blended family now. You start bringing other children in now. You start bringing a lot of other things on top of what I've already created.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, it's the fairy tale ending. You know, it's the whole Beauty and the Beast thing. You were the beast and you guys come together and now you're going to, you know, do your dance and twirl and it's happily ever after. And that last rose petal doesn't fall and hit the ground. And it's like, I wish I can say that that's how it's been.
But life is not a fairy tale.
That way.
Life is not a fairy tale.
You know, I'm still the guy with the addictive personality. I've just changed where I
apply that energy.
apply that. Okay. So one thing you know about me is I'm all in or I'm all out. If I'm going to do cross culture and we're going to interview, we're going to go hard. We're going to do this interview right. That's what I told you, right?
Yeah.
I said, we're going to do it right. You're going to see some tears. You're going to see emotion. You're going to see and hear things that maybe people haven't heard before. But to me, that's what I always needed.
Yeah.
I needed real, raw, unfiltered, not sugar-coated. Tell me how it is. I don't want the, Kris, it's going to be okay. Like, don't worry. It's going to be okay. No, because it wasn't okay.
Yeah.
So for me, to other people, I never like to paint that like, oh, don't worry. When in the back of my head, I'm like, no, we need to do something about this.
Yeah.
So, you know, Felicia has been the rock. That lady, oh my gosh. You talk about the Mendoza family, the Mendoza household. I mean, we should have had a statue built for her already. And she's only in her 30s because that's the impact that she has made and our family and will continue to, make. And she is absolutely a phenomenal wife. She supports me in everything that I do. She supports me in every place that I go. She trusts me in everything that I do in traveling. She's an amazing mom who always wants to watch more kids on top of her own kids.
Yeah.
I couldn't be blessed with a better human being, a better individual, a better wife, a better mother, to our kids. I mean, she has taught me what being a parent is really all about.
Yeah.
When you say you love all your kids the same, Kris, I learned it from Felicia because she's always looked at Jaslyn and Jaden the same as her own. And now I know what it's like to look at Jude. Jude's my own.
Yeah.
Jude's my son. I get to raise Jude today. God has me in his life for a purpose. God has Felicia in Jaslyn's life and Jaden's life for a purpose and for a reason. And, people always wonder, like, how do you make the blended family work? Well, first of all, in the beginning of the interview, we said there was no parenting handbook. So if you think there's a blended family handbook,
there definitely
ain't no blended family handbook. All I can say is the way that our blended family works is because we've always put God first. We've always trusted in God. We've always leaned on him because, mind you, here's a part of the story that most people don't know. When I got arrested in 2011, Jaden wanted nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. 8 years I went without talking to him, without seeing him, without any communication. 8 years I went. And people say, how did you deal with that? How did you? And the way I dealt with it, Kris, is God had put so much peace in me and knowing that in his time,
it would happen.
It would happen.
Yeah.
And once you really believe in his time, in his time, in his time, not our time, not your time, once you really are convicted and believe that something will happen in his time, there's no changing the way you feel.
It gives you the peace.
It gave me the peace. But God also told me, you have, mind you, we didn't even have Jaslyn. I mean, we didn't even have Joel and Jordan at this time. We just have Jaslyn and Jude at this time. God told me, you have 2 other kids looking at you who need their father. In my time, I'm going to make this one work, but you need to take care of these 2. Then we go on and have Joel. You got to take care of these 3. Then you have Jordan. You got to take care of these 4. 8 years. Do the math. I've been sober 11 and a half. Jaden's only been back in our life 3.5 years.
Wow.
But that was in God's time.
Yeah.
And once again, try to tell me that God is not real. I will slam 5 things down on somebody so quick, how God is real and how he has shown up in my life and how he can show up in anybody's life. But we are the ones that have to make the decisions.
Yeah.
We have to take action. We have to say, you said it earlier, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
And really, the basis of faith is understanding within yourself that a change needs to happen. And that's before you ever see the evidence of a change being even possible. When you started reading The Purpose-Driven Life and reading the Bible, right? You didn't know to the extent that God would take you and how much his redemptive power would work. But day by day, every little step that you took, you got better and better and better.
Right.
And God continued to build on that. Now, what a lot of people don't know is where you're at today. So you say, hey, you have this sobriety, you had a career before. What are you doing now?
Well, once I got into church, I mean, possibilities became endless at that point, So I found a home church that my mom and Felicia and my dad had already been going to in Brea, California. And I'll never forget the first time I stepped foot in there, Kris. Like, you have to understand, I found God in jail, but I had never been to a Christian church.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talk about this prayer, right? And people praying for you and prayer warriors and chains and emails. So, my mom's been at this new church. So I didn't know that my mom has the whole dang 3,000 member congregation praying for me, right? I'll never forget. I pull up to church that first Sunday, and I get off the car, and there's like 10 people standing there waiting for my arrival.
Wow.
I'm not joking. The associate pastor is standing right there, gives me the biggest hug, and I'm like, whoa, this is weird. Like, what the heck? Like, I'm thinking, my old thinking's like, everything I did? He's like, man, we've been praying for you. I'm like, praying for me for what? Like, what do you know? Like, Mom, what did you tell him?
Yeah.
Because that's the old thinking. That's the old behavior. Like, whoa, I don't want these guys. I don't want these church people to know like all this stuff that I did because they ain't going to like me or accept me.
Yeah.
Little did I know that that's not the way it is. That no, they accept you just the way you are.
Yeah.
And that, God's grace is sufficient, His mercy is sufficient. And, it's so funny because I talk about that because then I end up being on staff at that church. I end up being the assistant to that associate pastor.
Wow.
He was the first person who greeted me when I got out the car that morning. And I end up being his executive assistant. But, I always told myself and Felicia, when we first got into church, like, where are we going to serve? Like, what are we going to do? Where are we going to serve? Like, we got to do something. And I said, you know what, babe? Let's serve in the coffee ministry.
The coffee ministry.
And she says, really? And I said, yeah. And she goes, why do you want to serve in the coffee ministry? And I said, because I want people to see us first when they walk into church.
There you go.
Just as I saw that pastor that was waiting for me that day, Kris, what's the percentage of people who come in and get coffee, tea, or hot cocoa?
Oh, over 90%.
Exactly. So I said, you know what, babe? I want us to be the two individuals that people see and they talk to first in the morning because I want us to be able to make a difference in their life. Kris, we served and we gave it everything we had in that coffee ministry. And if you were to ever go back to that church, they will tell you, oh my gosh, we miss Joseph and Felicia saying hi to us because a good morning can change somebody's whole day.
Well, that's what connected us together is you greeting us in the parking lot at church.
So a good morning, an acknowledgement can change something forever.
Yeah.
So I just said, you know what, God, put us in coffee ministry. I want people to interact with us first. We want to make a difference in everybody else's life. And we just started serving nonstop, serving. Oh, we need you to, we'll do this, we'll do that. And then obviously I become on staff at church. And then, they said, hey, we have this thing on Easter Sunday and we want to highlight you. And we want to do your family testimony. And I was like, what, me? Like, because by this point, humility, I've been humiliated as much as I could. So I'm operating from this place of a humble heart and humbleness. Like, no, like, I don't want to be the guy on this right here. I'm cool. Like, if you want me to talk about my story, I'll share it with somebody. But like, this ain't for me. They bring us in, middle of the sanctuary, bring sofas in, whole family, mom, dad, and it's highlighting my testimony, my story. And they say we're going to air it all 6 services on Easter Sunday, over all the Good Friday, whatever. We have the most foot traffic. We think your testimony is going to change and impact, people's lives. And I'm just like, okay, I kind of don't want to see myself on screen. I'm probably going to look corny or, whatever. So Easter Sunday comes, 10 a.m. service, and it's packed out. I mean, Easter Sunday in church, what is it? Is that the most visited, most attended day of the year or weekend of the year? So, I mean, it's packed out. It's overflow, standing room only. And they had, rows in the front blocked off for VIP seating and main row. I'm sitting second row behind a couple of the pastors on the left-hand side. And this whole family took up the front row on the right-hand side. They were deep. And there was like 15 of them. And I'm like, oh, it's just pastor's friends, like the whole family, cool. My testimony rolls, and after the service ends, I get up. This gentleman gets up, and he turns and faces me, and he goes, was that you on the screen? And I was like, man, you found me out already? Like, I didn't want to be noticed. Like, just let me get up and leave. And I was like, in my kind of like macho, like, who are you to ask me? Like, I was like, yeah, why? And he's like, come to the back. I want to talk to you. And I'm like, come to the back. I want to talk to you. Like, I'm thinking, like, am I reprimanded? Because I'm used to always being in trouble.
Yeah.
And then I can hear my mom and my dad and Felicia whispering, Tim Story wants to talk to Joseph. Tim Story wants to talk to Joseph. Oh my gosh. I can hear them whispering, and I don't want to turn on and be rude and be like, who's Tim Story? But in my head, I'm like, who's Tim Story? And little did I know that Tim had spoken at that church regular, packed it out all the time. And my parents knew him already, and Felicia knew him, and they loved him. So we get to the back, and he said, man, he goes, you're my little brother who made it. And I was like, elaborate. Like, I'm your little brother who made it.
Yeah.
And then he got like emotional on me, and it was weird. If I could go back in time 10 years right now, I mean, that's a moment him and I talk about forever. We'll never forget. It's what brought us together. It was the pain of my past and his past that brought us together. He said, my brother passed because of alcoholism. And I go, oh my gosh. He goes, you're like my little brother, but you made it. And I'm like, wow, this is powerful. He goes, I don't know what it is, but God is telling me that I need to keep you close to me. And I'm like, okay, for whatever that's worth. All right, shake hands, thank you, part ways. A couple months later, he's back at the church. Hey, I remember you. I'm like, yeah, I remember you too. Exchange numbers. Rest is history. Here I am 10 years later, working for Tim Story, helping to launch the congregation family. And it's just amazing because what I'm seeing today, Kris, is that so many relationships are being formed through pain.
Yeah.
They're not being formed through, we won the lottery together. Our sons went to Harvard or Yale. Like, that's not the way that relationships are being formed today. People are coming together through pain, and they're latching on through pain. It was Tim's pain of the passing of his brother, and it was my pain of my family and my personal story that brought us together. And now I can honestly say that God was speaking through him that night when he said, I'm going to keep you close by. I don't know why. But today, I can honestly say that I know why. And it's just been an absolutely amazing experience to work side by side with an individual who just loves human beings, who cares about human beings. He talks about the underdog all the time. He talks about rooting for the underdog. I'm for the underdog. I love the underdog. I want the underdog to win. And so many people may think like, oh no, he only works with like the life coach to the stars. I'm the underdog.
Yeah.
I'm the underdog. So when he says that he loves the underdog, when he says that he's for the underdog, when he says that he's rooting for the underdog, Kris, I'm that underdog.
Yeah.
And that man has spoke so much life into me, has built me up, has lifted me up, has empowered me, has trusted me to be the person, obviously God, but he has really shown me what it's like to be elevated. No, this is not where you were supposed to be. You weren't meant to be in that jail cell.
Yeah.
You weren't meant to be in that rehab. You were meant to be here. You were meant to be here making kingdom impact. You were meant to be here to help thousands of people. You were here to share your story that I'm sharing right now. You were put here to not hold back. You were put here to put it all out there because you may help save. What is it biblically? It's about the one.
That's right.
It's not about the many. If one person reached out to me or you from this interview, I feel like our purpose and our job and what God has called you to do across culture has been fulfilled.
Yeah. And I really feel that, Pastor Tim says it all the time. While we were stuck in our setback, God was already forming our comeback.
Right.
And we can't get our breakthrough unless we truly break through it. We
Yeah.
got to move forward. And those are things that I've learned from my time listening to Pastor Tim preach and really pour life into people.
Right.
And that has made all the difference in the world. And so I think what people can gather from this interview is that there is hope.
Right.
That as long as you continue to put your faith in God, that God will continue to bring you through. And that's really what cross culture is about. So your transformation took place when you changed your mindset.
Right.
And as soon as you aligned yourself with God's purpose for your life, it didn't mean that everything became easy. It just meant that your life had direction.
Right.
And once you had that direction in your life, that changed the culture of everything around you to bring you to where you are today.
Right.
And so I want to thank you for really taking the time to share and to partake in this conversation, to really pour out everything that God has poured into you, and that God has given you an amazing testimony. But that's what cross culture is really about. Real life, real talk, real wisdom. This is cross culture.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.